Base races are some of the most high-intensity moments in League of Legends. The highlight reels of our sport are filled with these all-in plays. It requires full commitment to the plan, a readiness to outplay your opponents, and split-second decision-making. I'm Zirene, and this week on The Breakdown, I'm going to take a look at the Nexus race between G2 Esports and TSM on Day 3 of the 2017 Mid-Season Invitational Group Stage. After playing from behind the whole game, G2 get control of the map at 48 minutes, when they break open TSM's base by taking the bottom inhibitor. With a minute left before Elder Dragon spawns, G2 attempt to reset, but TSM have an inside track on the objective and position themselves around the pit. Lacking vision and key summoner spells, G2 are now in a precarious position. With their backs against the wall, G2 quickly evaluate the state of the map and make a call. And the call is to end the game. Let's get into it. TSM want to be in position for the Elder Dragon on spawn, so they rush towards the objective. Instead of shoving midwave, Bjergsen joins the rest of his team as TSM look for a pick on top of a control ward. This leaves G2 with an uncontested midwave to push. Perkz walks into the brush near mid and throws a dark sphere into TSM's vision. This gives TSM deceptive information. TSM assume that Perkz is now positioned in standard battle lines behind his tanks, so they dance around the Elder Dragon and only realize that he is shoving down mid lane with Sven as the wave crashes into their inhibitor turret. In a race against the structure damage of Sven and Perkz, TSM make the call to engage and kill the Elder Dragon. Trick is positioned on the left side of the pit looking for a potential steal, but loses vision of the objective. Hauntzer and Biofrost peel off of the objective and focus their attention on Trick to prevent a smite steal. Trick uses his last ward and safeguards closer to the dragon, but he doesn't see the HP and doesn't go for the immediate blind flash. With Elder Dragon secured by TSM, everyone on G2 now has a job to do. They either need to be disrupting TSM's backs or hitting the Nexus. Mithy and Expect attempt to slow down the bulk of TSM's forces. Expect throws out his explosive cast, and Mithy crucially interrupts Biofrost's Abyssal Voyage with a well-placed Glacial Fissure. Meanwhile, a potentially game-deciding 1v1 occurs between Hauntzer and Trick. After failing to steal the Elder Dragon, Trick is now separated from his team. Hauntzer's damage applies pressure to Trick's Lee Sin, and his survival instinct kicks in as he burns Dragon's Rage to try and disengage. As soon as Trick's only hard CC is down, Hauntzer immediately channels Teleport and TPs to the only structure not in threat of being burst down by G2, the still standing top lane turret. It's important to note that G2 don't see the incoming teleport and aren't positioned to avoid Rumble. But the fact that Hauntzer's Rumble is in the base means G2's disruption has failed. And now, they have to rely on their Nexus killers of Sven and Perkz to end the game. Hauntzer lands a great equalizer, splitting Perkz and Sven and forcing them to make some insanely tough decisions. Do they hit the Nexus or turn on their threats? Sven opts to use the culling on Hauntzer and kites backwards. Unable to close the distance, and with Bjergsen approaching from behind, Hauntzer shifts his focus onto Perkz. Seeing this, Sven cancels his ultimate and once again turns onto the Nexus, avoiding Bjergsen's flank, but putting him back in range of Hauntzer. After speaking to Sven, he said that the best option in this circumstance may have actually been to tank the equalizer and continue dealing damage to the Nexus. Something that sounds counterintuitive for an AD carry, but when you're looking to get every ounce of damage you can onto the Nexus, this would be the play to make. Now, let's take a look at Perkz here. In a Nexus rush situation, mid laners' basic attacks mean just as much as an AD carries. When attacking structures, your damage is calculated by taking whichever is higher, your base attack damage plus your bonus attack damage, or your base attack damage plus 50% of your ability power. Before counting masteries, when attacking the Nexus, Sven does 343 damage per attack. Perkz does 472. As the Nexus becomes targetable, Perkz attacks a minion, and then cancels 2 basic attacks during all of the chaos. Perkz also isn't ready for the incoming Shock Blast from Bjergsen and fails to flash the lethal projectile. With their damage dealers down, Mithy and Expect limp into TSM's base, but are easily cleaned up, leaving Trick as the only remaining G2 member alive. The last time TSM had eyes on Trick was back during Hauntzer's TP. With just over 1400 health, Trick makes his way to the top side jungle and sweeps for wards. Knowing full well that TSM have no vision of him, he starts to recall, but as he sees 4 members of TSM leave the base, he decides to go for broke and finish off the Nexus. With no wards left from his attempted Dragon Steal, Trick flashes the wall to avoid early detection by a minion wave. Haunter was left in the base to deal with super minions and is TSM's only defense against the Lee Sin. Trick kicks Haunter away from the Nexus. Haunter flashes after Trick, but Trick still gets multiple hits off on the Nexus. The real difference here is Biofrost, who started channeling his recall as soon as Trick went for the play. Biofrost's recall was needed immediately. With no time to look for a better spot, Biofrost starts his recall in the middle of the lane, and Wild Turtle runs up and stands in front of him to guarantee that the recall isn't interrupted by minions. Biofrost exhausts Trick, and they pop his GA. Biofrost even throws down a redemption for extra damage. Mithy begins channeling his own, but it's too late. Trick goes down, and TSM ace G2. They push for the win and kill G2's Nexus with their own at only 344 HP. A single attack more would have ended the game. Looking back, this was absolutely the right call. There was an incredibly high probability that this play works out for G2, but with plays that are 85% likely to work, there's still that 15% chance it doesn't. And that lies with the execution. Trick panicked and didn't save his Dragon's Rage to prevent Haunter from teleporting. And with the Guardian Angel, he would have been able to prevent Haunter from teleporting for more than enough time. Perks mechanically dropped the ball and missed out on crucial Nexus damage. Sven had a moment of indecisiveness when he was pressured from multiple angles. Mithy didn't use his redemption soon enough, and when Bjergsen slipped away, Expect had an opportunity to channel his teleport to swap from disrupting the enemies to being a Nexus threat himself. All of these moments add up. Here at MSI, they added up to a loss for G2. One that won't be remembered in the scheme of the tournament, but will likely live on in the minds of fans for a long time.